Welcome to a quick overview for War of the Sundered Realms, a fantasy wargame of mass battles for 2 players. Firstly, here are the items you'll need to play War of the Sundered Realms. A measuring device, counters to show unit activations, an opaque bag to put them in, 8-sided dice for each player, and further die to show damage when it's taken on a unit. Units come in 4 sizes: a cohort, company, battalion and individual. A cohort is a unit made up of 8 to 10 miniatures in 2 ranks with a base size of roughly 100 by 40mm. A company is made up of 2 cohorts, and a battalion is made up of 4 cohorts. Whereas an individual can be a single character, an artillery piece, or a monster. When a unit takes damage in War of the Sundered Realms, miniatures aren't removed from the unit. Instead, place the die or counters next to the unit to show how much damage the unit has taken. When the damage equals the unit's power stat, the unit is destroyed and removed from the battlefield. Units have 4 facings: the front, the left and right flank, and the rear. Facings will become important in the shooting and melee phases. Formation is the way in which rank units are placed on the battlefield. The initial formation of a unit is decided upon by the owning player when setting up and can be changed during the movement phase. Any unit will set its formation around the minimum cohort size of that unit. For instance, as you can see, this battalion of infantry can be set up as 2 cohorts wide and 2 cohorts deep, 1 cohort wide and 4 cohorts deep, or 1 cohort deep and 4 cohorts wide. This gives you the ability to create a solid block of miniatures, a thin column or a wide line depending on what is required during the battle. When changing formation, at least 1 cohort must stay in position while the others rearrange around it. So for instance, here, this unit will stay in position, as will the unit behind it. Now, this unit will stay in position and the other units will rearrange around that. When a rule asks for line of sight, this means anything within the front arc of the unit and measured from the front arc centre point to any point of the targeted unit without crossing over blocking terrain or other units. Infantry characters can draw a line of sight in any direction from their centre point. In the example we have here, the Woodland Watch wish to shoot the Dwarf Warriors, as we can draw a straight line without crossing over blocking terrain or other units from the Woodland Watch to the Dwarf Warriors. They can shoot. If, however, there's a building in the way, the straight line now crosses over this blocking piece of terrain, so the Woodland Watch cannot shoot the Dwarf Warriors. Every unit has a stat line which goes as follows. Type, what type of unit it is, whether that be infantry, monster, artillery, etc. Size, cohort, company, battalion, or individual. Move, how far the unit moves in inches. Ranged attack, the number required to hit an enemy with a ranged weapon on a D8. Attack, the number required to hit an enemy unit in melee on a D8. Defense, the number required to defend against an attack on a D8. Power, the number of dice a unit rolls when making an attack or defending. This is reduced by the amount of damage the unit has taken. Morale, how hardy a unit is against taking losses. And finally, points, how much the unit costs. The game is played with 8-sided dice, otherwise known as D8s, and when making an attack or defence roll, any result of an 8 explodes, allowing you another dice roll. This in turn can also explode. Just keep on rolling until you don't roll an 8. For instance, in the example we have in front of us, 1 8 was rolled. So I will roll another die and get a 7. However, if that was also an 8, I'll do another dice roll which is now a natural 8 of course, so we'll roll another dice and that's a 4, so I will stop rolling. Each player needs a token for every unit they have in their army and be of the same size, shape and weight but differing in design or colour to your opponent. Dice or beads are good examples. I use Water and Effect Tiddlywinks. Both players' tokens get placed in an opaque bag, and players take it in turns to randomly select a token from the bag. The selected token is then given to the owning player, who can activate one of their units with it. Once the unit has been activated, the token is placed next to the unit to show that it has been activated. An activated unit can move, then shoot, and finally fight in melee. Once all the tokens have been drawn from the activation bag, the turn is over. Put the tokens of all the surviving units back in the bag and start the next turn. When moving, a unit can carry out one of the following moves in its activation. It can stay stationary. This means the unit can pivot 360 degrees or can change formation. The unit can move forward. This is a full move forward with one pivot of 90 degrees anywhere along the movement path. Move back or to the side. Move half the movement speed either backwards, left or right with one pivot of 90 degrees anywhere along the movement path. Advance. Pivot up to 45 degrees, then move straight forward, twice the movement characteristic of the unit. If contact is made with an enemy unit, and you can snap your unit to the centre point of the nearest cohort in that unit, the move becomes a charge and you fight them in the melee phase. If an unactivated character is within 6 inches of a friendly unit which is charging an enemy that the character can also charge, they can choose to activate out of sequence and join the charge move on the enemy unit. If they do this, they may add their power to the friendly unit's power during the melee phase, but have to use the friendly unit's attack and facing. Once this has been done, pull out the owning player's tokens of the activation bag and place them next to the character as if it had activated normally. Artillery cannot advance or charge, and you cannot move through enemy units when moving, but you can move through friendly units. You cannot end a move within an inch of an enemy unit unless you are charging. If your move crosses an obstacle, you must immediately stop when you make contact with the obstacle. Any movement that has not been used is lost. However, in the next turn, the unit is free to proceed past the obstacle without any hindrance. If a unit moves through difficult terrain, it must halve its movement speed. However, if the unit is charging, they can charge at double their move speed as per normal. However, there will be a modifier during the ensuing melee combat. Blocking terrain consists of high walls, houses, deep rivers, lakes, and cannot be crossed by any unit unless it can fly. A unit may shoot if its weaponry is in range and the unit they are targeting is in line of sight. Here the Woodland Watch wish to shoot the Dwarf Warriors. The Woodland Watch have power of 10, which means they'll roll 10d8s, and they have a range stat of 3+. This means every roll of a 3 or more will cause a hit. We'll remove the ones that haven't hit, and there is an 8, which means that explodes and converts. That's caused 8 hits. The dwarves will then roll their defense value, which is 4+. That so far is 2 damage. However, they also have 2 8s. Only 1. So 1 hit's gone through and caused damage. We'll now place a die next to the dwarf unit to show that they've taken 1 damage. Every time a unit takes damage, they have to take a morale test, which we'll cover later. The dwarf player's token has now been pulled from the activation bag, and he wishes to activate his dwarf warriors, and he wants to charge the Woodland Watch who previously shot him. He can now pivot up to 45 degrees, which isn't needed here, and moves forward in a straight line up to double his movement speed. As contact has been made with the Woodland Watch, he now snaps to their facing, make sure we take the damage counter and activation counter with them. As the Woodland Watch have already been activated this turn, they can only choose to defend during the melee. The dwarf player checks his power, which is 10. As he's received 1 damage, they will roll 9d8 to see if they can hit the Woodland Watch. The dwarf attack stat is 4+, so all rolls of 4 or more will cause a hit. Unfortunately, they have missed 3 times. However, they have also rolled 3 8s, so they will explode. So we'll take these and roll these again. They're all hits. That's 9 hits. The elf player will then take 9 dice and they will try to defend. However, the Woodland Watch only have a defence of 6+. However, they've done exceedingly well, with only 4 defences failing. This means the Woodland Watch will now take 4 damage. We'll place the dice next to the Woodland Watch to show they've received 4 damage. As now the unit has been destroyed, we'll push back the attacked unit by 1 inch. And, as they have taken damage, they will now need to take a morale test. If we go back to the start of the melee, but the Woodland Watch haven't already been activated, they can choose to attack instead of defend. They can do this because they have not yet activated and they've been charged in their front facing. What happens now is each player will roll their power minus any damage, and this will inflict hits and then damage on the opposing player without a chance to defend. The Dwarf Warriors have a power of 10, however have taken 1 damage, so this means they will roll 9 dice in melee and will hit on a 4+. At the same time, the Woodland Watch have a power of 10 and no damage, so they want to know their die, and they hit on a 5+. We'll now calculate how many hits each side has done. The Dwarf Warriors have caused 7 damage and 1 8, so we'll roll that now. That's failed to convert. The Woodland Watch have caused 8 damage and also scored an 8, which does convert. This causes 9 damage. With the 1 damage already inflicted, this means the dwarves are unfortunately destroyed. However, the elves have now received 7 damage. So we now mark their unit with a 7, and also we pull a token out of the activation bag to show that they have activated. Now that the melee has been concluded and the Dwarf Warriors have been destroyed, the victor, being the Woodland Watch, can move forward in a straight line up to its full move, or move backwards at half its move, or remain stationary and pivot up to 360 degrees. Each time a unit takes damage, a morale test must be taken. Roll 2d8, add the amount of damage the unit has taken in total to this figure. This gives us a 12. As this is under or equal to the unit's morale stat, they're safe. However, if the total was over the unit's morale stat, for instance 18, this is 2 points over the unit's morale stat and so will cause 2 amounts of extra damage. We will also mark the unit as activated if they hadn't already been done so. Some units are capable of wielding magic powers, whether derived from Mother Nature, arcane tomes, or soul consumption. The end result is generally the same. There are 6 spells that specified units have access to, but each of these units may only select 3 spells to use during a battle, and only use 1 per activation unless otherwise specified. Spells are cast in the shoot phase and require line of sight. In this example, the Dwarf Rune Priest wishes to cast Lightning Bolt on the Woodland Watch. As this is within 24-inch range, and he has line of sight, he can cast the spell. Lightning Bolt has a power of 8, so 8 dice will need to be rolled, and is a range attack stat of 4+. So So all 4s will become hits. That gives us 4 hits. However, there is an 8, so we roll another die, and it doesn't convert. This gives us 4 hits on the elf unit. The elf unit will have to defend as normal. However, their defense is only 6. Unfortunately, the elves haven't defended a single hit and will take 4 damage. As they've now taken damage, they must also now test their morale. This brings us to the end of the overview video. I hope you found it useful and enjoy playing War of the Sundered Realms.